Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm JJ Flazanes, your host. Thank you for downloading today's episode. Today's episode is awesome, and I am excited to share it with you today. Want to warn you, there's a little bit of background noise. I'm not sure where Steve was. It sounds like a restaurant or a hotel. He travels a lot, so I wasn't going to demand anything different because the value in today's episode far exceeds any slight irritation you might have with some of the background noise. So I did the best I could. I just wanted to warn you up front. So pay attention to the words and the conversation because it's literally gold. Today's show is awesome, and I'll tell you a little bit more about Steve in a minute. I do have a few announcements. So first and foremost, today's show, Napping Your Way to Millions. We talk a lot about the connection between law of attraction and metaphysics and literally making a lot of money and finding the right business ventures and purpose for you. And it's coming from a different place of someone who's been very, very successful and wanting to bridge the gap between sort of what the general population think of multimillionaires and people who are doing investments and buying and selling businesses. You'd think, oh, those people don't necessarily use law of attraction principles. Well, they do. And Steve is a clear example of that, and I so appreciate that I actually was going to air this show on health and wealth when I launched that soon, but I thought it was appropriate now. And it's even more appropriate now because I have launched and opened up enrollment for my Inner Circle Mastermind. There are 2 Inner Circle programs going on right now. One of them is the membership, and you've heard a little bit about that. That is $9.99 a month, and that gets you access to 1 group coaching call a month that's live, 3 to 4 episodes a month. You get 3 30-day manifestation challenges for free. You get guided detoxes. You get a whole bunch of stuff. And that is the membership. And again, it's $9.99, and you can go to jjflazanes.com/inner circle. But more importantly, what I'm looking for and what I'm wanting to offer to you, those of you that are listening, is a mastermind centered around this mind, body, soul concept. This idea that we need to live a balanced life and that inspiration is really our key and our ticket to following the path that has been laid out for us or that we're looking for to leverage energy, to leverage inspiration and creativity, to have abundance. And that is why I started the Inner Circle Mastermind. There are only 15 people in it, and currently I have 8 spots left. There is a little bit greater financial commitment than some of the other programs that I have. However, it is 50% off the regular rate if you were to buy all the things sort of separately. And we close registration in the beginning to middle of January. So if you are someone who runs a business, owns a business, wants to start a side gig, and you don't want to do it from the place of killing yourself or being completely out of balance or wrecking your life by ruining your relationships and your health to try to attain money, if that speaks to you, it's a conversation that we need to have. It's not something where I'm going to send you to a link. Literally reach out to me, jj@jjflazanes.com, and let me know that you might be interested in joining the mastermind. Again, there are 8 spots left, and I have given a money back guarantee that you will make back the investment you put in. Just this year, though, because since it's new for me, I wanted to have the focus be on really supporting 15 people to make a significant amount of money out of business or side business and really give you that guarantee. So there is the mastermind, the Inner Circle Mastermind. So if that speaks to any of you, because again, I will close registration in a few weeks, please reach out to me, jj@jjflazanes.com. Now, the membership you've been hearing about, that's jjflazanes.com/inner circle, and that link will be in the show notes. And last but not least, we have the January Releasing What Weighs You Down. One of the things Steve talks about in today's episode is about clearing, and he's teaching a technique or talking about a technique called Ho'oponopono. It's a Hawaiian clearing technique that actually I also just recorded a show on. So I will publish that in the next couple of weeks, but if you want to know more about Ho'oponopono, we're going to have a show on that. So if you feel the need to have sort of the extra intervention of clearing some of the emotional blocks, I just highly encourage you to come to Releasing What Weighs You Down in January. There will not be another live event for you to attend until 2021. Make sure to check the show notes. I am using them more these days. So if we mention a link on the show, or I've mentioned a link here in the beginning of the show to let you know what's going on in your community, in my community, then there will be a link to access whatever I'm talking about a little bit more easily. So go underneath wherever you're finding this podcast, and there should be links to all the things that I'm talking about. And one more exciting thing I'll let you know about. I had the distinct privilege of interviewing Mariel Hemingway last week. And next week, her show will air on the podcast, but it is up and live on video at my YouTube channel right now, which is jjflazanes.tv. So we talk about health and happiness and her journey and how she's doing what she's doing. And I think it's a really fun interview. So if you want to see it instead of listen to it, I definitely recommend to check out my interview with Mariel Hemingway, the first of at least two, on jjflazanes.tv. So now let's talk about Steve. Steve Little is an acclaimed serial entrepreneur, venture investor, philanthropist, and mergers and acquisitions expert, well known for generating accelerated value growth and high exit multiples for his clients. He sold his first company at age 15 for a significant six-figure sum and never looked back. He's led 6 successful startups of his own to private acquisitions of over $100 million each, and provided explosive growth and lucrative exits for many dozens more. First with the top-tier Silicon Valley venture firms, and in the past several years as founder and managing director of Zero Limits Ventures. Known as the Activator, Steve has personally taught, coached, and mentored hundreds of business owners, corporate executives, and entrepreneurs, helping his clients overcome the myriad of complex challenges to develop breakthrough strategies for peak individual and team performance and conscious leadership to generate astounding financial returns. Steve is also a 4-time champion bodybuilder and powerlifter, an accomplished musician, and a dedicated and loving father to 2 amazing and talented daughters. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate being here.
So I really am going to be very intrigued to hear your story of being a serial entrepreneur and starting your first company at age 15 with a significant 6-figure return, and to know who you are now, and to have met you and seen you and had conversation with you and have dinner with you and have a drink with you at the bar, and know sort of where you are now and the things you've been teaching and talking about and working on. I know we talked about Ho'oponopono when we had dinner a year ago at Melinda's house. And so the spiritual part of being a business owner and leader is what interests me of having you on the show. And this show will air not only on spirit, purpose, and energy, but health and wealth and everything else, because I think your story is I intuitively know that your story is going to be inspiring and cross all of the different shows and platforms that I have. So thank you again for being here today.
Again, thanks you. I enjoy the opportunity, and hopefully it'll serve some good.
So let's talk about the premise from the health and wealth side of why did you start a business at age 15? Give us your story of how you started and that journey. And then when you got to that place where maybe that journey took a turn because you didn't like what you had to give up to get it.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I appreciate the question. And it's actually sort of funny. I'm going to digress just a little to get started, JJ, but I just did the stand-up comedian challenge with Matt Kazam at Caroline's a couple of weeks ago, and this is part of the story I tell on my comedy act. But so I got started my first business when I was 13, and it was one of these things where I was a 13-year-old kid, right? It was Saturday, I was bored. Back in those days, you tell your parents you're bored, they'd go find something for you to do, so you're probably better off keeping it to yourself. But I went out and told my dad I was bored, and he said, why don't you go cut the grass? And I didn't know how. So he showed me how, and I cut the grass, and I, went back and forth a couple of times. I was sweating my butt off and, getting bit by the bugs. And I did about 4 times of that, about 15 minutes. I said, this is what any 13-year-old would say, screw this. I don't want to do this. This is no fun. I saw a neighbor's kid playing in the backyard, I did a deal with him. I paid him half of what Dad was paying me, got him to do the hard work, and I went on to the next neighbor and sold them on the idea of having me cut their grass. And I just kept doing the same thing and hiring more kids. And ultimately, I hired a bunch of laborers from down at the corner filling station. And before long, I had 100 yards I was cutting. We had a pretty big business, just cutting the grass. And along the way, I encountered a challenge that really ultimately led to the reason the business was so valuable when I got rid of it. I had found myself sort of going door to door every Saturday, reselling people on having me cut the grass that week, right? So I didn't have any sort of recurring process. And it was in August in Pennsylvania. The grass doesn't grow very fast. So I started hearing people say, hey, well, I give it 2 weeks, come back, in a couple of weeks. This, it doesn't need to be cut this week. And I realized that was going to cost me some money. So I came up with the idea of having people sign up for an annual or a semi-annual service contract. And I would, for that annual fee, a monthly fee, I would cut the grass in the summer. I would rake the leaves in the fall. I would shovel the walk in the winter. I'd keep their place looking nice. And I wasn't doing any heavy landscaping or anything, but I would keep it looking good. And just about every client that I had went for that deal. And, that really turned into a pretty interesting business model. Even though I didn't really understand the significance of that, it was just, literally out of convenience to me that I did it. And one day my dad comes home and says he's been transferred and we're moving. And I said, hey, Dad, what am I going to do with my business? He was a NASA engineer and he was pretty involved in what he was doing. So ever since that day, he kicked me out of the garage to cut the grass. He didn't realize that I'd built a pretty good sized business. So I went up to my room and got this notebook that I used. I called it Steve's Big Book of Business. I'd written right on the cover there in black magic marker, Steve's Big Book of Business. I laid it out for him and he was leafing through it. He got about halfway through it and then all of a sudden realized, holy cow, you cut all these yards every week? Holy Toledo, son, show me your bank book. It was like one of those moments. And, I'd saved up a bunch of money and he was pretty impressed with that. And then ultimately he said, look, I'm an engineer. I don't know anything about businesses. So I don't know how to tell you. I mean, I guess you just got to tell these people you can't do it anymore. Well, I'd seen some TV ads for some new services. This is way back when, I'm going to age myself a little bit here, way back when Lawn Doctor and those companies were first sort of getting traction in the market. And I'd seen their TV ads, so I figured, hey, maybe they'd be interested in this. So I had my dad drive me into town and went in with my big book of business and I showed it to the GM and the first guy offered me 187 grand for it, which I thought was pretty good. And, I thought I'd be a cool negotiator and say, yeah, well, I'll think about it. Right? So went out to the garage, to the driveway. My dad was out there and told him, and he was like, oh man, that's more than I make in 2.5 years. Holy cow, son, that's incredible. Give me the check. I'll put it in your college fund. I just said, no, BS to that, Dad. Let's go down the street, talk to the next guy, see what he'll give me for it. And that's really the beginning. I mean, the next guy gave me a lot more money and the rest is history. I went from there and, did some other things after we moved and, it sort of set up a pattern for me, which ultimately has become the premise behind my current enterprise. I mean, I couldn't have articulated this back then, but that decision to move from weekly selling to monthly contracts, monthly billable contracts, was the thing that made that business worth almost $250,000. And while I never realized it at the time, it was in the end what I refer to now as the principal value driver for that business, right? So that's how I got my start, and I just sort of kept doing that over and over and over again. Ultimately built 6 different software companies and grew them to be pretty sizable, sold them. Always sort of with the same idea, looking for where's the magic value driver, where's the thing that I can do that's going to make the buyer really want to buy it more. And some of those companies now employ thousands of people all over the world, and it's been a great story. Been a lot of fun. However, the part of the story that doesn't get told is, how many times I crashed and burned and failed and stubbed my toe and fell and, ran into a wall or, hit my head or whatever it was. And, along the way, I just became so sort of focused on the next win. I really stopped paying attention to the rest of my life. It was really sort of who I was. If you'd have known me back in the 80s and 90s, the only thing people could say about me is hell of a business guy, right? That would be it. So I didn't really invest in my family. I mean, I missed my oldest daughter's childhood completely. I was in the process of missing my younger daughter's childhood, and they're 9 years apart. So, it was a long legacy of a lack of involvement that I guess I could say I subconsciously patterned after my dad or something, but no excuses here. I just wasn't really a whole person. I was really only doing one thing. And it got to a point, JJ, where it was actually physically painful for me to go to work. I would get in the traffic driving from Gilroy, California, where I lived at the time, up to the Valley of San Jose to go to work. And at that juncture, I was working in a venture-backed company. One of my companies had a lot of venture money, and the venture capitalists out there have a tendency to think they own you when they've invested in your company. So I was under an enormous amount of pressure. I was grotesquely overweight, close to 300 pounds. I was under a phenomenal amount of stress. I was not a happy person. Did not have a happy family, right? And I was in physical pain to go to work. I mean, I would cry, like weep in the car sitting in traffic because it hurt so much to go to work. I get emotional just telling this story even now. And one day I just decided, hey, this has got to change. I mean, I'm only 40 some years old at the time, and I got another 50 years. I can't live like this. This is horrible. And I really struggled for a long time with how do I make this change. My lifestyle had grown up around a pretty substantial income and a reputation in the industry that I was really cognizant of, and that the investors liked me because they could make me do whatever they needed me to do, and I was really unhappy with all that, but didn't really know what to do about it, right? And it was on a trip I took to Japan. I was selling a company for the investors. I went over and I met with NTT Docomo and negotiated a pretty good transaction for the company. And I was on my way back, and I thought, this is a big win. If I'm ever going to get out, now's the time to get out. And I had talked to my wife at the time about that, and she said, look, I'm just sick of seeing you so miserable. I mean, you're miserable, we're miserable, everybody's freaking miserable, and I'm tired of it. So if you think you can find your way out, then by all means get out, and we'll back you. And so I bought a notebook at the Tokyo airport for my flight home, and I was going to work all this out, right? I was going to write a new plan for my life, so to speak, right? And I sat through that entire flight. I didn't write a freaking word in that notebook. And we started to land in San Francisco. And, I pulled that notebook out, and I was somewhat in desperation. I just wasted hours just staring out the window, wondering what to do, how do I do it? How can I afford to walk away from my income and my reputation and, yada. To me, it was like a big as life kind of decision. And I wrote on the back of that notebook in big letters, sort of diagonally across the back page of the notebook, just quit. And what I realized is I couldn't make a move going forward until I tied off where I'd come from. And so I got off the plane, sent my resignation in before I even went home, sent my resignation to the board and all the board members and the investors. And I went home and sort of braced myself for the fallout, right? Which came a little later that day. But that was really a pivotal point for me, and I'd sacrificed my health. I'd sacrificed my relationship with my daughters. I'd sacrificed my relationship with my wife. I'd sacrificed everything other than work. That's all I had. And so I had to turn it around, and that was the turning point for me.
So you quit
I did.
and had no plan. Did you plan to take any sort of time off to reflect and figure out what your next step was? I mean, sometimes when we're on such a spiral of negative momentum, the best thing to do is just stop and to walk away. And it's not, and hopefully it sounds like you were making enough money at that time you could afford to take some time without doing
Hmm.
anything,
Hmm.
because you had the luxury of having bills hopefully paid, with
Hmm.
the amount of money from
Hmm.
the transaction or from past
Hmm.
work before. So what did you do when you just quit? Did you give yourself time?
Yeah, I did, and I had a lot of time, but I did give myself some time, and it was interesting that that's where I sort of stumbled into this spiritual pathway that I'm now deeply entrenched in. Right? I mean, back then, I didn't understand the idea of attraction. I didn't understand the idea of metaphysics and universal energy and attraction and manifestation and so many things that now just sort of part of my day-to-day life. But I didn't have any inclination of any of those things. And a friend of mine introduced me to a book by Joe Vitale, and then I had the opportunity to actually meet Joe, and then as you know, that led into a whole relationship with Dr. Len and the Ho'oponopono clearing technique. And as I learned, I just became more and more, I guess, ravenous for more information. I kept thinking, people really need to know this. I mean, we need to make sure that people don't make the mistake I made and get, way down that path, not knowing, how miserable their life was going to be just because they were not ruling their life. They were not really on a path of purpose, and they were not, moving in a direction of personal fulfillment and growth. They were just going to work and making money. And I thought everybody had that problem. So I wanted to solve it for everybody, right? So I just, started looking at ways that I could communicate to other people. And ultimately, I wrote a program called the Perfect Biz Finder, which is really designed to help people through this process of self discovery, where in the end, you have a concept for a business that will fit you, your life purpose, your soul mission, right? It'll help you be fully expressed and live the life you really want to live. And I got very excited about that, and to market it, I learned how to be an internet marketer. I went and I met with guys like Yannick Silver way back then, and Ryan Dice, and all the people who were the big names then, to learn how do you market this stuff on the internet. And I built a modest, it wasn't really a super successful, but it was a modestly successful internet business, selling an ebook and a a membership program that was really all about helping people dismantle these false beliefs about what has to be and reinstantiate their lives around a soul purpose and around a mission that would allow them to fully self-express, grow, and learn, and be the person they really wanted to be, have the relationships that they want to have, be in the health they want to be in, pursue the personal growth and fitness goals they wanted to, and so on, right? So, that's what I created, and that did okay for an interim, and then, as you know, those things tend to sort of fade out. And I had a pretty big community of people. We started 100,000 businesses in that process, but I wasn't really involved in any of those. That was just sort of, they went through my program and ended up in a business. You may know, I think you know Brad Costanza. Right? He approached me at an event not long ago, and he walked up to me and says, "Hey, you're the Biz Finder guy, Steve Little, the Biz Finder guy?" I said, "Yeah, that's me." He goes, "Holy shit, man, you're the reason I'm here." I mean, I was lost, didn't know what was going on, didn't know what to do. I bought your program for $37, and holy cow, now I'm a big shot podcaster. He's got a big podcast now. I don't know how any of you guys make any money, but anyway, so it's just, and it's really rewarding for somebody to now that was 15, 20 years ago, right? And here's a guy who still remembers it that way. And so that really sort of set me up on this mission. And of course, that's grown and transformed ever since. And now we have Zero Limits Ventures, which is a capital acquisition M&A firm We're starting something called the activist capitalist, which is really more of a branding initiative to get my message out to the into the hands of other mission-oriented leaders and impact-driven companies. We're going to have an activist capitalist fund later this year. So we're really sort of taking all this to a new level, whereas we'll continue to support people as they start and get underway. But we're also really looking at how do we take entrepreneurs who have established something, really put them on a very fast growth and value growth trajectory. So in the end, they have more capacity to have a greater impact on the world. So now we're fully committed to just impact mission-driven companies and enabling them, empowering them to have the biggest impact they can have.
What are some of the companies that kinds of things that they're doing in the world that you work with?
So I personally support a number of initiatives. I support 600 AIDS orphans in Arusha, Africa, in a place called Malawi. I support the Amazon rainforest through an organization called the Pachamama Alliance. I helped renovate an ecotourism village deep in the jungle there, and now they have electricity, and people, entrepreneurs in particular, can go down there and heal and grow and experience all kinds of growth ceremonies through that process. I support an organization that's about creating artistic reefs under the water, using ships and recovered airplanes and other things, and doing a thematic sort of destination dive location, which is also growing coral reefs and reestablishing the reef infrastructure in the British Virgin Islands. And I do a lot of work with a company called Beneath the Waves, which is a shark conservation organization. Then out of the work that we do with other people, I've got one of the founders. I just sold this company last year, is now starting a banking organization here that has negotiated the financial rights, or the financial transaction rights, to finance startup companies in so what I'm looking for, impoverished indigenous cultures in Northern Africa. So we're looking at how to stimulate the entire economy, not just do microloans for people who make belts and hats, and not do externally financed corporate enterprises, but how do we stimulate the middle market economy of a culture like that? Got others that are really focused on cleaning up the ocean, taking care of both the visible trash and the micro pollutions that are in our foods now. Just started a new initiative with a company that's focused on housing the homeless in Haiti. It's an ongoing problem down there. So those are the kinds of initiatives that we work on through the companies that we catalyze through Zero Limits Ventures.
Well, that sounds amazing. I know there's a story behind when you talked about manifesting, law of attraction, frequency, quantum physics. When you decided you didn't want to feel terrible anymore and you wanted to be happier, can we talk about some of those tools that you used and how you use them now? Because when you and I sat down recently in San Diego, and we were talking about how many naps you take, and so the title of today's show is "Napping Your Way to Millions." And so someone's thinking, I haven't heard yet how much he naps, and I want to know what is that about?
All right, let's just jump to the quick. I take 3 or 4 naps a day. And it's funny. I mean, I'm an older guy. I'm 61 now, which is, that's not old by any way, but in the community we run in, I'm at the upper end of the spectrum, right? And, but what I find, JJ, is that the napping is a very powerful tool for me. And it's actually a combination of things. So you're right. As I sort of came up and was introduced to the concept of the subconscious mind and how it's really driving your experience, and that, if you want to know what you believe, look at your life, right? And your life is a reflection of what your subconscious mind believes. And if it's not what you want, then you need to figure out how to reprogram that subconscious mind to believe something other than what you're getting. And boom, it's it looks like magic. It's not magic, but you experience like magic, where the right people show up and the right money shows up and the right opportunities show up, and that gets translated into something called the law of attraction, and then that gets commercialized into something that unfortunately sort of bastardizes the fundamental. But the reality is that it's your subconscious mind that's at work, and what you really need to do is discipline yourself so that you can keep that clear of the barriers, the hindrances, the negative self-beliefs, the negative self-talk, the things that keep you constrained in whatever life you're living that you don't like, so that you can reprogram it, redesign it to support the life you do want. And that's sort of the fundamental. And that's a practice. You need to get into a practice on that. And there's all kinds of tools. The very first one I ever used was something called The Science of Getting Rich. There's a book written by Wallace D. Wattles. I'm going to say in the 17 or 1800s even. That was a long time ago, and I don't have the date right, but it's not anything new, right? But it's really a technique that's designed. It's somewhat cumbersome and mechanical, but it works, right? And I found that when I went through the exercise and I crumpled up the things that I had in my life that I did not want, and I burned it, and then I redesigned my life to be the way I wanted it to be, and I folded that paper up and carried it around with me for 2 weeks. It is true that my life began to become more and more like what was on that piece of paper every single day. So I became convinced that there's something to this stuff. Then I wanted to learn more, because that's a cool process, but it's like you're in a crisis somewhere. You can't say, well, wait a minute, let me make a list of all the things I have about this that I don't like. Let me make another list of the things that I like about it or that I want to have happen, and let me burn this one and let me do this one, and you just wait while I do that. That's not very convenient, right? So I wanted to find other tools that were more proficient, more convenient, more empowering, something you could use universally, sort of all the time. And there's tons of different meditations and affirmations and incantations and all kinds of things. But I ultimately was introduced to an ancient Hawaiian healing technique through Joe into Dr. Hugh Len in Hawaii. It's called Ho'oponopono. It's a very simple clearing technique. It's sort of like you teach your mind, your subconscious mind, to run, envision like a macro. When you say the words, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, that's your mantra. And when you're saying that mantra, what's really happening is your mind is processing, your subconscious mind is processing and clearing out limiting beliefs, subconscious negative self-talk, that kind of thing. And so you're able to get clarity on whatever's happening around you immediately. So one of the things that friends have observed about me is that they'll see me in a stressful or a conflicted situation, maybe a negotiation, maybe an unhappy client or whatever it might be. And they'll see me sort of immediately, it looks like I'm sort of drawing into myself. And what I'm really doing is setting up that mantra. I might close my eyes for 10 to 15 seconds. I'm just programming that mantra in. I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. And I just get it running. And then it literally runs in the background, and I can sort of go back to work doing what I'm doing. And the amazing thing is, others would tell you that their observation is time in and time again that, I'll deal with the conflict, I'll go into Ho'oponopono, and then literally 15 to 20 minutes later, that conflict self-fixes. I get a phone call from someone who says, hey, you know what, I'm really sorry about the way I spoke to you an hour ago. That was inappropriate. This is really such a bad situation. Can we do this to resolve it, right? Like that. And so I've just become convinced that this is a way of operating, it's a way of being for me that allows me to have a greater impact on the world, to have a better life, to feel better about my living, and so on and so forth, and to really help other people reach their fullest potential. So that's all facilitated by periodic naps throughout the day. So what I find is that rather than get into the turmoil and constantly try to ho'oponopono your way out, or whatever technique you use, I find that if I stop and take a 15 to a 30-minute nap every couple of hours, I'll usually start that nap with a meditation, an audio meditation or something, maybe just a mantra. Then I sort of stay clear, and I'm able to think more clearly, react more clearly, more concisely, more precisely, if you will, have a bigger impact, really see clarity in the situation, contribute more to the growth of the other people that I'm working with. I have a lot of clients say, Steve, you know what you need? You need a scribe that just comes around behind you and writes down everything you say. Because every time I talk to you, I learn something, right? Which is a great compliment, and I really appreciate it. But I like to say, well, it's not really me. It's really sort of the universe operating through me, because I'm on a mission to help you be as impactful as you can possibly be, right? So that's what the naps are all about. Plus, I don't get tired. So I stay rested, which is also useful.
Well, we were laughing about how many naps you had, and you're running these multi-million dollar transactions and companies and venture capitalist endeavors. And I was like, okay, so I know you have teams of people that work on things and that don't necessarily work for you, but work with you. And it's not really you inside of every single organization. So there's a different relationship there, for which most of us don't understand because we don't do what you do, right? Most of us are working in a business as well as on a business versus working on a business and not in it at all, just working on it. And so I thought that was a great segue to understand and to really help people know that you are currently using and leveraging, like you said, all those subconscious energies to help you with whatever's going on right now to attract the right and perfect thing, and how you have leveraged, again, law of attraction, quantum physics, Ho'oponopono, subconscious mind, all these things to continue to be successful, but just in a different way.
Hey, that's so great, and you're 100% right on that. I've got an even better angle though, and this, I have to admit, I did not anticipate, and I don't know why I didn't anticipate it, but thank God the universe gave it to me. One of the clients I have had a large successful company. I was representing him as to sell the company, so we'd been through our regular process with him, and as part and parcel of what I do every day, I'm clearing on behalf of my founders as well. So I'm not just clearing me and my experience, I'm clearing them and their experience, right? And he was a very bombastic CEO type, very emotional, easily angered, right, sort of guy. And so a lot of times when you're starting the process of negotiating a sale of a person's company, they become somewhat irrational at times, and very fine triggered, let's say, right? And the buyers are just trying to get information so they can make a good decision. They're not making comment on the company you've built or on you or your management style. But, those two things can clash. And in this case, he had a severe clash more than once that cost him the transaction, it cost us the transaction. Where you might have a deal on the table for $10-15 million. He has an emotional reaction to something the buyer says, responds in an inappropriate way. The buyer says, screw it, the deal's off, right? Not a great scenario, right? And so the only thing I knew to do was to start clearing on behalf of this client. It's just recognizing, look, there's something in this person that's being triggered. And that thing is a subconscious thing. He is not consciously aware, nor is he consciously controlling this behavior. He thinks he's right? And that's okay. But I can either try to educate him on why he's not right, which is probably not going to work, or I can work on clearing the subconscious belief that's leading to that fear, the belief, that reaction, right? Now, so I just started doing the clearing. And eventually we got through a transaction. It was a very successful transaction. We grew the value of his company by over 700%. So he was thrilled with the outcome, which is great. But here's the thing. The big win for me came months later because I did not even anticipate the effect that all that clearing was going to have on him and his life. when I ran into him at an event in Cartagena, he came up to me and gave me this massive hug, just completely uncharacteristic of this human being to physically contact another man, let alone hug me, right? So, and I was like, wow, taken aback. I'm going, wow, that's really nice. I'm glad you're doing well. He goes, oh, I'm doing better than well. You know, something happened to me, he said. I don't know what it was, but something triggered in me. Now I'm involved in financing. You know, he's the one that's working on these banks in the impoverished nations in Northern Africa. He goes, I've never felt better. I've never been more excited. I've never been more energized in my life. And I'm just thinking, oh my God, this guy's life was transformed. I'm not taking credit, but his life was transformed by virtue of all that clearing that I was doing on his behalf, all of the issues and beliefs and negative opinions and all those things that were keeping him as this angry, volatile, bombastic entrepreneur were gone. And here's this loving human being that's just giving and giving and giving. It was amazing to me. And it's what taught me, that's sort of the final thing that said, no, no, what you're doing is bigger than what you thought it was. It's bigger than that. You're having an impact that's now multiplied its effect. Now, this guy is a loving human being who is in control of his subconscious mind and is out there manifesting incredible outcomes for impoverished nations all over the world now, but certainly in Northern Africa. And now he's a guiding light, an example, a catalyst for others to do the same. That's really what got me excited. When I recognized that is when I realized that, oh, it's really about something even bigger than I thought it was, right? Isn't that amazing?
Yes. I have a couple questions. I'm with you on the when you can do something and realize there's an evolution in my business coming that has really taken the culmination of my entire life to get here. But when I recognized where it was going and what I needed to be prepared for, and how at the end of the day, what has stopped me, or I guess I've had to grow into, realizing it wasn't about me, and realizing that the information I have can change lives so quickly, so simply, and that it's my duty to get it out there, put it in a perspective that now feels so much more purposeful. And again, I can handle anything coming down the pipeline because it isn't about me.
Yeah,
And so I feel that when you're helping others in that way, and you're opening up something again that's deeper than just money, and it's really an energetic shift in all areas of their life, and that how it changes them as a human, it's a testament to how I teach people to use law of attraction when it comes to other people. Now, I want to know what kinds of clearings exactly that you did. I have some in my arsenal, and I want to know what you've done and what you did to that individual in particular, because many times people feel like that they can work on themselves, but they're a victim to other people's energy. And so you very
right.
beautifully outlined that you didn't try to change him. You just worked on what you could do, which was not only, I'm sure, the clearings that you did, but the fact that you believed and you decided to stubbornly see him in a higher frequency, and to work on that, and to believe it was there, and then to take action to even convince you more, so that your frequency was so strong in seeing him in this light, that alone for a lot of people is enough to pull them into that, at least for a minute. Whether it's sustained or not, it's a different story, but your
Hmm.
attention to that, it's like people that think they're victimized by their relationships, no matter what they are, don't realize the power they have in shifting it, by shifting their own perception of it, and then how they talk about it, what they think about it, what they do
Yeah,
about it, all in the comfort and quiet of their own mind and their
yeah,
own energy fields, not at all trying to convince anyone to be different or do
right.
anything differently. So what were some of the practices that you did, and what were the physical clearings that you did?
Yeah. So it's great. I mean, it really comes back to the fundamental, right? Everything is energy. That tells the whole story. If you really appreciate the deep meaning of that statement, recognize that there is no distinction between my thinking and his thinking. There's only thinking, right? So, and it's the energetic field of communication that actually determines that outcome. So you're right on. So the kinds of things I did, yeah, I got to tell you, 90% of my clearing practice is Ho'oponopono. I just believe in it so much. It's just served me so well. It's so easy, frankly. And it's true in every dimension, right? Because here's an example. If I get in conflict with somebody, let's say you and I have an argument or a disagreement about something, it is, you know, I can say the words, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. And any one of those phrases can trigger the deepest connection with you, so that you can see in my eyes. You don't even have to hear the words. You can feel in my being that, this is not what we want. We do not want this negativity, this negative energy flow, and you can immediately respond to that, right? So I really think that the vast majority of what I do is that. Now, the twist on this case is that I kept a journal, because the situation with this individual was so complex. There were a lot of moving parts. There were a lot of different angles to our relationship. It wasn't, just like a prospect that came in. There were other angles that I had to really be cognizant of and prepared to deal with. I kept a journal to try to keep me focused, right? So, hey, and I remember writing things like, I want to see him grow in this way. I want to see him enjoy the presence that he has with people. I want to see him understand the power of influence that he has. And I want him to feel loved, like that. And those were the writings in my journal. And then every day, sometimes multiple times a day, I would go into Ho'oponopono. I'd look at the journal entries, or I'd make a new entry, whatever I was inspired by, or two, and I'd do, I don't know, 5 minutes, 10 minutes of Ho'oponopono. I'd close it up and move on to the next thing in my day. And that was just the practice. I was committed to that practice. I didn't have to work at it. It wasn't like I had to put it on my agenda or on my calendar. I operate pretty much out of inspiration pretty much all day, right? So my day sort of looks like, I get up, I have a cup of coffee, I go to my meditation place. I have a particular place I like to do my morning meditation. Sometimes I'll use a tool like an audio, or sometimes I'll just be in quiet breath meditation. Sometimes I burn incense, sometimes I don't, right? Whatever it is. But it always starts the same way. When I'm prepared, I'll say to the universe, to God, for me anyway, is, that I know I can't do this without you. Take this time and show me what you need from me today. And that's it. And I just go into my meditation, and always I get a download of inspiration. Then it's up to me to decide if I'm going to pursue that inspiration or not. Now, I can tell you that, when I don't, it's usually not so good. When I do, things generally work out quite well. So that's where I would get these inspirations. It's like I might be in the middle of the day, and boom, I'll get just a flash of an idea, or an image of this individual in my mind, or maybe, an image of this person angry, and maybe the words he used in that angry phone call or whatever. And it's just it's clearly, in my opinion, just a reminder from the universe, hey, clear on that, clean it now, right? And it takes 5 minutes to do. So I could easily stop what I'm doing, say, okay, that image, clear it. I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, right? And it's just that simple. So it becomes just a regular part of what you do. It's not like I have to work at it. It's not like I have to schedule it or labor over it. That's why I choose that as the most powerful clearing technique for me.
Well, you have fine-tuned your awareness of, here's an issue. I see it as a block. It needs to go away. Let's do this right now. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Most people have to repeat the pattern so many times, be so frustrated. And then when a suggestion like, well, why don't you clear it or spend some time on it? That first time doing it usually feels weird or like a chore because they haven't done it before. It's your understanding of the energy that makes it so easy to just stop what you're doing and in that moment do it. And it's not a big deal. It's a reaction because you see the problem and you don't want it to snowball and get bigger, and you want to catch it right then, and you want to feel better about it, and you want to cleanse the energy so that you can feel better. Because you're in tune with it, and I know you're a Scorpio, so the water sign helps you to really pick up on those energies really
That's
quickly.
true. It's true.
Having that awareness helps you to take action on it. And some people don't even have an awareness, so they don't even know what to do. It's understanding, how do you describe that to someone who isn't used to picking up on those energies, or who just uses their head to figure it out, versus understanding that, again, that subconscious, that energetic field, our that what we're emanating from and how we're sort of showing up on that energetic level, that is as much, if not more, a part of the equation than how we piece together information in our brains.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's that's one of the benefits of today's episode for people, I think, is, especially if there's any men out there, like some of them want to just say, hey, this is woo-woo stuff that doesn't make any sense, or I don't really believe it. And I always have to laugh when people say, well, I don't really believe that. And I'm like, there's really nothing to believe. This is physics. This isn't a belief system. This is a science. And
That's right.
so I'm glad you don't think it's a real thing and it's a religion, but it really isn't. And
Right.
I'm not out to convince anybody necessarily.
Yeah.
But I have to laugh. Oh yeah, you believe in that kind of stuff. Oh well, it's really kind of physics, and
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
to hear it from someone who's using it on such a level that you are, will validate it for many people that are still skeptical, because the people that they're talking about spirituality stuff are usually broken poor and aren't
Yeah.
necessarily, or aren't, so the ones that are using it silently aren't necessarily talking about it because they don't want people to think that they're woo woo and weird. And
Yeah.
it is the time in this evolution, especially in today's world, where it is necessary for us to be sharing what's underneath our successes and how things are really working in a sustainable way that's good for everybody and isn't just about gaining or attaining. It really has, it's a cohesive balance between doing good and doing and being, and helping everyone in the process by some of the clearings that you're doing to allow things to unfold.
Yeah, it's so well stated. Thanks for that. And I wish I could keep all that. It's interesting though, because it's even more, because the reality is that um, every thought we have is is put out there, right? I mean, it's all energy, every single one. And so you start to be aware of your own thinking. You start to be aware of when you're the disruptive force in the room, right? Like, hey, I'm human. I'm like anybody else. I can walk into a room, feel some bad energy, and I can get sucked into that energy just like anybody else, right? Um, but the awareness piece is really the critical piece. I remember when I first discovered this, I remember that, when I'd be aware of something, I would just say out loud, boy, awareness is a powerful thing. Right? I mean, I sound like an idiot just walking around saying awareness is a powerful thing, but it is true. It's really about being aware of what's going on around you and recognizing that, hey, there's something happening there, right? And I, I can choose to engage it or to eliminate it, right? It's up to me to decide how I react, how I respond to that stimulus, whether it's good or bad, right? And so when I see, I'll be in a restaurant maybe, and I'll see a patron in the restaurant chew out a waiter, right? Now, there's a lot of ways a person could handle that. Like, it's like do nothing at all, just sort of look at your food and go, oh, that's too bad. But I feel that as like a wave of negative energy that's now going to permeate the entire universe, right? It's like it's the butterfly's wings, right? I mean, that's out there and going, right? And so I feel a responsibility to clean that up, right? It's like I got to do my part. So I'm going to clean on that. I'm going to clean it, whatever it is. That's really, it wasn't the waiter that triggered that person. It was some deep-seated memory, subconscious belief, something caused that person to think that what the waiter did meant something about him or her, and they'll be damned if that's going to be the way it is, right? That's the way they feel. That's why they're reacting the way they are. I don't know what that thing is. I don't care what that thing is. I just want to clear it. I just want to eliminate it, right? Because if I eliminate it, it can't impact the rest of the universe. And this is where you take this whole concept and extend to the metaphysical side. You say, well, in a very real way, cleaning up this kind of energy field, if you could get enough people doing enough of it, right, you would in fact eliminate things like poverty and war and all social evils and so on, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be an insurmountable objective. It just has to be something that we get enough people willing to raise consciousness enough, right? I think it's 1.3 billion or something is the number we're looking for, right? Which is the theoretical tipping point for consciousness, right? So, so it's really sort of our responsibility to, to always to clean and clear. That doesn't mean I get up and go over to the table and talk to the guy and say, hey, you really shouldn't treat the waiter like that. That's none of my business. That has nothing to do with me. The only thing that has to do with me is that wave of energy the guy just kicked out, and I got to go clean that up. Does that make sense?
Totally. You're being an ambassador for energy. Like you're sort of that protector. You're like a cop who sees the problem's going to happen. You're going to go take care of it before it affects anybody else because you see it and you're deciding, you know what? I'm not going to wait for this to get bigger and make things worse. I'm just going to go take care of it. No one's going to know the difference. I'll feel better. Everyone will be better for it. And there we go.
That's right. Exactly right. That's it. And so imagine if everybody else in the restaurant did that, right? Then I think what you end up with is you end up with a transformation on that guy, right? The guy who was so angry, all of a sudden, he's got nothing to be triggered about because the group has eliminated that subconscious trigger. And he's the guy that then says to the waiter, hey, come over here, please. I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have acted that way. What an asshole. That's an asshole thing to do. You didn't do anything to deserve that. I apologize. That's an indication that whatever that trigger was has at least been diminished, if not removed, right?
No, it's very powerful. And I mean, you're talking about spreading social consciousness, and that's kind of what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, with my work and my shows and what's coming next for me and wanting to really have people take ownership of their own frequencies, vibrations, emotions to kind of get out of victim mentality and know that they can make a bigger difference than they think they can just by owning some of this and just doing like what you're doing and doing what you're saying and doing the practices on yourself, and don't worry about everybody else's stuff. Leave everybody else alone. Just do what you can do. It's none of your business. If you just focus on clearing yourself, being a beneficial presence on the planet, doing what you do, and then it emanates and it refers out and people feel it and they're affected by it and it makes change. In fact, it makes greater change than yelling at everybody, telling everybody else to be different. And then they put resistance up because they don't want to be told what to do. And all of a sudden we are no further along on this process of helping the planet when you want to yell at everyone to be different.
Yeah, you're totally right. Totally right. I mean, and that's really the key. And I think that once you start, it snowballs, right? Even when I started, in the Genesis story I told you, which is, reasonably accurate, I guess, it's to my recollection, I would never have imagined that I'm here where I am, an ambassador to consciousness, right? Using my business as a platform for social good by elevating consciousness. Who could have written that script?
Well, but it's what we need, and that sounds like it's perfect. It's where you were headed. So
yeah. Exactly.
So how do you, at this point, help others? Like so someone's listening to this, I'm listening to this, and I'm thinking, I'm not a major company like that, but I want your help. I want to take that next evolution of where I'm growing, and I want to do the same thing. So what do you have? How can people get information from you? Are you doing anything with the general public? Or are you just spreading the love and consciousness for us all to aspire to? Or is there a way in which you work with people?
Well, on this particular front, I don't really have anything to offer other than my willingness to share, right? So people can get in touch with me through my website, zerolimitsventures.com. There's a page /access, which allows people to schedule some time with me on the phone. It's really about the primary focus of that business, though, which is about helping business owners understand value drivers and position themselves for higher rates of return so they can go have a bigger impact on the world. So it's not really I help people get conscious kind of pathway, although a lot of people come through that door and we end up having conversations about consciousness. So, it's as good a way as any. I will say this, I'm in the middle of something. I've got Zero Limits Ventures, which of course is my business, my primary entrepreneurial endeavor. But I'm just in the process of launching something called the activist capitalist, which is the concept of using business as a platform for doing global social good, really focused on the 17 global initiatives, of course, but looking at it through a diverse lens so that we're making all the contributions we can. And of course, and it's founded in the principles that we're talking about here. And as that captures more momentum, there's actually going to be a whole series of products and resources that'll be available online for people, including updated versions of the training that I provided in the Biz Finder. You can always go to the Biz Finder today, download a free copy, go through those exercises. You will become a clearing machine by doing that. Whether you go build a business of your own or not, doesn't really matter. You'll be in a different place than you were when you started. So that's a great resource that's available to anybody for free. And we're going to build on that and bring it to another level of effectiveness for people with video and so on. That program is 15 years old now, so didn't have any of that. So that's coming. So the way you find out about that is to get on my mailing list, which you can do through the Zero Limits website, as I said. So even though it may not be that we spend a lot of time together in the interim, that'll be available in the first quarter of next year. So I'd love to be able to send an email to people saying, hey, it's ready, go get it.
Absolutely. Well, you can send it to me too, and I can send it out also to let people know that it's ready.
Absolutely.
And are there
Absolutely.
qualifications for people who would qualify to work with your business when they go to zerolimitsventures.com/access? Are you looking for businesses?
What we really do, JJ, is we'll take all comers. If you go there, there's a video to watch, there's a free book to download. If you'll go through that information, fill out the very short form that's on that, then you'll be automatically routed to my calendar. I see the calendar entry. I'm able to cross-reference that with the information you provided about your business. And then based on that information, I'll send you an email that routes you to the best resource for you, which might be a phone call with me, but it might also be, a different pathway for education or a different pathway for some more background work, so that you're really ready to take advantage of the resources we have for you.
Steve, this has been amazing. And I'm going to have all the links that you just talked about in the show notes for people to check out and to get, and definitely want to get on your list. And if not, when you're ready, when everything is ready, come back. We can have you back on the show.
Great.
Or we can send out an email for you, whichever makes more sense to you, and let everybody know that it's ready.
Fantastic. Well, look, I very much appreciate your time and allowing me this platform for sharing. So much appreciate what you're doing in the world. So thanks for that opportunity.
My pleasure. And your story is amazing, and it's here to help inspire so many people. And I hope everyone listening will, especially all of you ladies, share it with your men, because we need to have everyone understand a little bit more deeply that really it's about that consciousness piece. And it's not hard. It's not hard. It just takes a little focus, and to realize that this isn't some woo spiritual BS. This is actually physics, and we can make a bigger difference more by concentrating on what we have control over and what we can do versus telling everyone else what to do. So
yeah, or what not to do.
Or what not to do. Right. We don't want to. No one really likes to be told what to do. So
that's right.
So if you could just do it for them and do it with them without them knowing, more power to everybody, and we'll heal everyone a lot faster who's looking for it and ready for it. And Steve, thank you so much for everything that you've shared and the inspiration that you are.
Likewise. Take lots of naps.
I'm going to.
All right, JJ. Thank you.